Imagine, if you will, a beautiful home in the countryside of Russia, filled with so much love, so much laughter. In this home, underneath the cellar, a silent killer grows. And this beautiful family would tragically come to realize that what is considered a seemingly sweet staple in most homes can also turn deadly. My name is Ruth, and welcome to today's episode. In today's show, we're going to be talking about a very sad, gripping, and bizarre story. So if this sounds like your thing, why don't you give us a thumbs up and also click on the subscribe button. In the quiet village of Laishava, which is a town that is close to Kazan, in the Republic of Tatarstan, that is a region in Russia, Mikhail Shalishava, aged 42, will be vacationing with his lovely family in a beautiful home in this village. Now, Mikhail's family consisted of his wife, Anastasia, and their two beautiful children, Georgie and Mariah. Alongside his family, his mother-in-law, that is his wife's mother, Anastasia's mother, Iraida, who was 68 years old at the time, would be vacationing with them as well. Now, Mikhail and his family were a regular family. They were very close, a lot of love. Mikhail will take his family to a farm in Laishava, and they will have riding lessons, especially his daughter Maria, who was 8 years old at the time. She was learning how to ride horses. She had come to love ponies, and so her dad would give her horseback riding lessons. This was one of the things that the Shalishevas did, and it was one of those things that bonded them together. So they would plant crops, food, they would harvest it, they would use what they needed, and they would keep the rest in a cellar. Now, in Russia, in most homes, there would be a lot of houses that will have these cellars. Cellars are like these places on the ground. Usually, most of them would not have windows, just a door leading to the cellar, and people will store their food for the winter. Russia has like one of those long winters. It can get really cold, and you can't go to the farm during the winter, and it might be hard to get fresh produce. And so a lot of families will farm, harvest, keep it in the cellar, preserve it there, and then go back and use it during those winter months. This was no different with the Shalishevas. In August 2013, the family is all in the sitting room. They're trying to get dinner ready. So Maria, she's drawing ponies on the table while her parents are in the kitchen. They're trying to set up, and her brother Georgie, and as most teenagers will do, they will be like in the sitting room playing games. Mikhail was making funny faces at Maria, just totally being a goofball. And, Mariah, she was laughing, giggling, and just having a lovely time with her parents. So as they were cooking, Mikhail and Anastasia, they would realize that, what we need for dinner is not currently on the table. So he remembers, I think we have some potatoes. And he's like, okay, let him just check it out. Hopefully there will still be some good and they can use it for dinner. So Mikhail will go down to the cellar to get these potatoes to use for dinner. Now, above ground on the first floor in the living room, Anastasia is still in the kitchen prepping the ingredients, waiting for Mikhail to come back with the potatoes. And after a while, the ingredients are already ready, but Mikhail is nowhere to be found with the potatoes. So Anastasia, she's like, where is he? What's going on? We've been waiting for the potatoes. So she calls out to him by his name, but there's no response from Mikhail. So she's left wondering what's going on. Let her go check and see. Maybe the potatoes were too much for him, to carry all by himself. So let her go down to the cellar and help him. She opens the door, she shuts it behind her, she descends downstairs to go help, the potatoes. She doesn't come back up either. Now, everyone on the first floor, the grandmama is waiting, Mariah is at the kitchen table, Georgie is playing games. Now, grandmama, she notices that, what they put on fire starting to heat up. So she goes into the kitchen to find out what's going on, and there's a whole lot of smoke coming up from the kitchen. What's happening? And then she realizes that, Anastasia and Mikhail are not here. So she asks Mariah. So Mariah is like, no, they went down to the cellar to get some potatoes for us to make dinner. And then she's like, how long have they been gone? Because food is about to get burnt. So she turns off the cooker, and then she's like, okay, let me go call out to them and see what's going on. So she goes towards the cellar, and then she calls out their name several times, but there's no answer. So at this time, Georgie is playing the game in the sitting room, and the noise from the TV is a little bit loud. So she thinks, they probably can't hear me over this TV. And then she's telling Georgie to turn up the game, lower the volume, so she can call out to his parents and find out if they're answering, and just get to the bottom of what's going on and get them up here to finish dinner. And so Georgie, like any other teenager who doesn't want to be interrupted as they're playing, and then he's like, what, I'm just going to go to the cellar and get them for you so I can come back and finish my game. So he stands up, he leaves for the cellar, he opens the door, he sees what gets to be like an outline of the parents, and he's like, that must be them. Now, as Georgie goes down, he also doesn't come back up, and this now starts to bother the grandmother. So Iraida she's bothered, what's going on? Everyone in the family keep going down to the cellar, cellar and no one is coming back up. So what exactly is the problem? At this time, she gets really anxious. She gets really nervous. Something weird, something bizarre is going on. So she quickly goes to the phone to call a neighbor. And she's like, please come over to the house. And she's like, please come. I've called out to the family members several times. They keep going down into the cellar and no one is responding. Something really weird is going on. Please come. And at this time, Iraida is, contemplating, should I go down there? And you should know, Iraida is the grandmother. She is 68 years old and going downstairs is no mean feat for her. And then she's just, what, let me just go down there. I mean, what possibly be wrong? So she goes towards the cellar. She calls out their names, still no answer. She descends down the stairs and she also doesn't come back up. Now, all that's left is Mariah. Mariah's in the kitchen. At this point, she's scared. She's a kid. She's 8 years old. She's like, what's going on? And she waits for a bit. But after a while, she's like, okay, let me call out. Calls dad. She calls mom. Calls Georgie. She calls out to the grandmother, but there's no reply. So she also decides to go down into the cellar. And, as a kid, she was, going slowly, edging towards the door, still calling their name, but with a note of fear in her voice. So she's calling out to them, but there's no reply. So she goes to the cellar, the door is open, and the sight that Mariah would find out there will be something that will be etched in her memory forever. There on the floor, Mariah will find her dad, her mom, and her brother Georgie, and her grandmother Iraida on the floor, all dead. This is the nightmare of every 8-year-old. So she would scream. Mariah screams at the top of her voice, not believing the sight that is before her. Now, at this time, the neighbor arrives. He knocks on the door, no reply. The neighbor knocks again, no reply. And then goes to open the door and then finds out that, the door is unlocked. Enters into the parlor and sees that, the TV is on. The game is popped. And there's no one in the living room. There's no one in the kitchen. Obviously, it seems like they were cooking because there's a lot of food ingredients and, vegetables out on the table. So what's going on? Where's everybody? And just at that moment, the neighbor heard a loud scream. And, the neighbor turns around, running towards where the scream is coming from and wondering what is going on. He notices that the scream is coming from the cellar. The neighbor would rush into the cellar, rush down the stairs, and would also find the same sight that Mariah found earlier. Mariah is screaming, family members are on the floor, and immediately the neighbor is panicking and, just realizing that all 4 of them are dead. The neighbor whisked Mariah away up the stairs and out of the house, back to their own home, where they called the police, to report something terrible has really happened. 4 of my neighbors are dead. A man, his wife, his son, and the grandmother is dead. And, the police would come over. They would be like, what's going on? They would question, Mariah, question the neighbor. The neighbor is like, all I know is that I got a call from the grandmother. She says something weird is going on. Everyone is descending into the cellar and no one is coming back up. And that would match the same story as Mariah, Now, the big question is, what kills them? After the police carried out the investigation, they will find out all 4 family members were poisoned. They died from a toxin gas that poisoned them when they went down into the cellar. Now, what was this toxic gas? Is this something that is, airborne? Is it going to affect more people in the area? And then they will go back to the house, back to the cellar, and guess what, guys? They would find out that this toxic gas came from the potatoes. Now, potatoes contain something called solanine. Solanine is a glycoalkaloid that when it's left to rot, it can be very deadly. So now these potatoes were obviously in the cellar for a very long time. So unknown to the family, they thought that they could just go down into the cellar and grab whatever, potatoes that were good and that they could use. But what they didn't know is that some of these potatoes were rotting away. Potatoes contain glycoalkaloids. So this glycoalkaloid had come to a very, very build up of toxic gas that was left rotting away for a very long time in the cellar. The cellar had no open windows where, this gas would then, dissipate from. So it was trapped in that cellar. So the air was very toxic. And the moment Mikhail opened the door to go down there to get the potatoes, the moment he got into that cellar, immediately he was poisoned. And he would, according to the police, he fainted first and then he died. His wife would follow suit, and so would their son and their grandmother. Now, the reason why Mariah survived is because when the grandmother, Iraida, went down into the cellar to get these potatoes, she opened the door. She didn't shut the door just like the rest of the family members were doing every time they would go down into the cellar. So now, leaving the door open allowed this toxic gas to dissipate, from that cellar. So they came out into the parlor, into the sitting room, through the windows. And so opening the door allowed the gas to, escape, if you will. And that was what saved Mariah. By the time she went out there, the toxic gas had already dissipated from that atmosphere. So she was not poisoned. Now, Mariah, fortunately, she survived. So let this come as a warning to most of us. So she survived. Now, fortunately for Mariah, she is survived by some of her extended family members who took her in. But unfortunately, this is a very inconsolable loss. This is not something that you just recover from. Now, Mariah, 10 years later, because this happened in 2013. So now, 10 years later, Mariah is a food and nutrition ambassador. She talks about, safe levels of food, how to store food properly, and it makes sense. She's going about educating people on how important it is to make sure that your food is stored safely. Having survived, something as catastrophic and as tragedious as that, I would expect nothing less. So that concludes today's episode. So if you're interested in more stories like this, why don't you go down into the comment section and leave a comment, and also click on the like button and the subscribe button. We have a ton of interesting video coming your way. Now, until I come your way again, do take care of yourself.